Following was restored ability to be academy because help ability to learn freely. Did you catch that? Probably not. And that's because that sentence was obviously way too fast. And I'm not going to introduce this video by telling you that you need to be able to comprehend at a speed that fast for events like debate or events like public speaking. But while it may be helpful later on, in the early stages of your speaking and debate careers, it's much better to focus on slowing things down rather than thinking too fast and speaking much faster than you can actually process and much faster than your audience can handle. Which is why in today's video, I'm going to be explaining exactly how you can speak slower and get your audience to comprehend your voice properly through the 3 V's: volume, variety, and velocity. Let's start with the first V, volume. It's quite simple to understand at first, and you might be overcomplicating it. But it's simple. Volume simply means volume. You want to increase your volume and make sure that your audience can actually hear you or your judge. Now, a common mistake that people make is that they use their volume too much, and they have too high of a voice that makes it seem like they're screaming and shouting rather than actually talking or speaking. And so you want to kind of find a good middle ground between too quiet and too loud. That allows you to convey your thoughts proudly and confidently without actually yelling at their audience and making it seem like you're very unprofessional. Another common mistake that people make that's also related to volume is that people will end their sentences by sort of trailing off like this. See how I ended my sentence by trailing off and lowering my voice? That's something you should not do. You should emphasize the last word of every sentence or every phrase so that way your audience better understands what you're saying and helps you to engage your audience by helping them keep their attention on your own presentation. The second V is variety. Variety simply means that you have a variety in tone, and so you shouldn't be talking monotone. For an example, like this the entire time, because this is very boring and nobody wants to listen to you talk like this. Rather, you should have variety in your voice and have different tones, sort of like what I just did when I emphasized words like variety. You should essentially have different types of voices, and not to like in a sense that you put on an accent, but simply that you emphasize or lower certain things. And for example, maybe the unimportant stuff you filter out, but the important stuff you emphasize. That's a pretty basic one that you can use to increase your variety. But as you go on in your events in debate or in your public speaking field, then what you should want to do is try and have more than just emphasis and like tone down. You want to have different middle grounds too, which are also more complex, but we can get into that later. For now, the only thing that you really need to know is that you want to emphasize and also lower certain things. And really try and carry out that middle ground whenever you want to keep your sentence structure perfectly normal. A neutral position is good because it not only allows you to recuperate and give you time to think, but also allows you to prepare for another time when you're going to change your tone up or down, and allows your audience to also feel like they're still being connected without being shouted at too high of a voice all the time, and also not properly being engaged with at too low a voice all the time. The third and final V is velocity. Now, your velocity can really affect how people understand your content, and so it's important that you maintain a good velocity that's not too fast, but is not too slow. You want to have a perfect good middle ground that allows you to achieve both. And so that way you're speaking on to where you're progressing your speech and not keeping it on for too long, but you're also getting through the content at a reasonable pace, so that way not only you have time to somewhat think about what you're saying, but also so that way your audience has time to comprehend what you're saying. And so as an example, you could take a judge in a debate round. If you talk too fast, they'll have trouble understanding. But if you present too slow, then you won't be able to cover all the things in your speech. Debate has a very limited time frame, and as we'll get into like later on in the series, you'll find that you only have 3 to 4 minutes per speech and not that much time to prep. So you should really be focusing on getting out as much content as you can in a clear and concise way. I'm sure at this point you've probably noticed that a lot of the stuff that I've talked about right now is really just repetitions of stuff that we've covered in other videos. But more than just repetition, it's sort of expanding on concepts as we go on through the road of improving your public speaking. We want concepts to feel familiar, and that's why we introduce them in a simple form, and then slowly but surely make sure that they get more and more complex over time, so that way big concepts don't feel too hard to understand, but rather feel really simple and easy because you already did the hard stuff first by watching the other videos. And that's also why I recommend that you check out these other videos instead of just kind of skipping to this one. It's much easier if you are able to understand this video if you watch the other ones that set up a baseline foundation for you to really understand how to be a better public speaker. Which is why I highly encourage that you go watch the other 3 episodes that are here linked on the channel. But enough about that, we can put that to the side for now. Let's talk about 3 drills you can use to practice volume, velocity, and variety. The first one is the tongue twister drill. This drill only requires you to say a bunch of tongue twisters within like a minute and see how many you can cover. Now the catch is that you can only tally tongue twisters that you say if you pronounce them correctly. But let's say I'm trying to pronounce she sells seashells by the seashore. I can only tally that as a tongue twister that I got correct if I actually pronounce it correctly. What this does and how it works is it forces you to slow down on your words. That way you aren't speaking too fast, but also allows you to really emphasize covering many different ideas and concepts or words in this example by speaking tongue twisters and trying to get them down as fast as you can. And so it's a good way to practice pacing yourself and also coherency at the same time. The second drill I have for you is a much more simpler drill. All you have to do is read a paragraph out to yourself at half your normal pace. Now, obviously, you don't know what half your normal pace exactly is, but you could sort of guesstimate and estimate like how much that really is compared to your normal voice. And so all I really want you to do is to speak slower on that paragraph. This is training you to not only have a better pace overall, but this is also teaching your mind that speaking slow is okay, rather than you speaking fast and slurring your words together or being incoherent. The last and final drill is going to help you with variety, and it's going to be called the emphasis drill. This drill is also pretty simple. All you have to do is take one sentence, any sentence, I'll even give you one. The quick brown fox runs extremely quickly while the dog dances on the side. What you're going to do is you're going to emphasize a different word each time. And as I have on screen, you can use these examples to help you. But the main thing you should be focusing on is really trying to change which word you emphasize and how loud you emphasize it. This way, you're not only getting a good idea of how to have variety in your tone, but you're also getting a good idea of how that changes the meaning of the sentence or how that changes the emphasis placed on certain words. And for this reason, this exercise helps because it allows you to grasp the idea that certain emphasis on certain words can really change the meaning that is applied to the sentence itself and change the perception of how the audience understands the sentence in its context. So that's it for now, and this episode actually wraps up our Finding Your Voice series. Now, don't fret, this is only one of many more series to come, so we'll still be having many more episodes in store that will help you not only with public speaking, but also help you with debate as a whole. And so feel free to tune in to our next series, which will be about how to think properly and how to actually make cohesive arguments as a whole. But until next time, peace. For example, let's say I'm trying to say seashells by... Let's say I'm trying to... And for example, let's just say I'm trying to say she sees... Let's just say I'm trying to say she sees seashells by the seashore. I could tally that, but only if I got that directly correct. But let's say I'm trying to pronounce she sells seashells by the seashore. I could only tally that as a tongue twister that I got correct.